King Charles stands in the frost-bitten January courtyard of St. James's Palace, his voice cutting through the ceremonial silence like a blade. Remove him from post and place him under arrest for gross misconduct. The handcuffs click onto Staff Sergeant Grant, a veteran with more than 2 decades of service whose combat-worn instincts have kept the royal family safe through the most dangerous theaters of war. The crowd falls silent. Cameras begin rolling. Grant does something that will change everything. He looks directly at the king and says 5 words that will force Charles to question everything he thought he knew about loyalty and duty. What happens next will shake the very foundations of royal protocol. If you're hooked already, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe for more shocking stories like this, and let me know in the comments where in the world you're watching from. The frost-covered stones of St. James's Palace have witnessed centuries of ceremony, but nothing quite like this moment when tradition collides with defiance. Staff Sergeant Grant stands motionless as the handcuffs close around his wrists, his face showing no emotion despite the chaos erupting around him. With 22 years of service, Grant carries himself with the quiet confidence of a man who has faced death in places most people cannot even pronounce. His red ceremonial uniform bears the weight of service ribbons that tell stories the public will never hear. Grant is no ordinary ceremonial figure standing guard for photographs and tourist cameras. 3 tours in Afghanistan taught him to read the landscape for hidden dangers, while 2 deployments in Iraq sharpened his ability to spot threats in crowded markets and busy streets. The 6 months he spent in Syria remain officially unacknowledged, but those classified days forged instincts that border on supernatural. Fellow soldiers call it his 6th sense, the way Grant can identify trouble before it materializes into violence. His tactical awareness has prevented multiple security breaches during royal events and stopped threats on several occasions that most will never hear about. The crowd of onlookers grows larger as word spreads through the palace grounds that something unprecedented is happening. Tourists lower their cameras and visiting dignitaries crane their necks to understand why a decorated guard is being arrested in broad daylight. Whispers ripple through the gathering as people struggle to comprehend what could possibly warrant such a public humiliation of someone who has sworn to protect the crown. Veterans in the crowd recognize the service ribbons on Grant's chest, and their confusion deepens into concern. Grant once spotted a concealed weapon from 40 yards away during a state dinner, simply by noticing how a waiter's jacket hung differently on one side. His ability to process crowd dynamics and identify potential threats has become legendary among palace security staff. These skills were not learned in ceremonial training, but earned through years of combat where hesitation meant death. The contrast between Grant's battlefield experience and the pageantry surrounding him creates an almost surreal scene. Red-coated guards with bearskin hats execute their movements with precision, while NCOs bark orders that echo off ancient stone walls. The brigadier's medals catch the winter sunlight as he oversees the arrest with military efficiency. Grant remains carved from stone throughout the procedure, his breathing steady despite the metal restraints and the growing crowd of witnesses recording everything on their phones. What sparked this confrontation remains mysterious to the gathered spectators. Something about a vehicle movement incident has triggered this dramatic response, but the details remain locked behind official protocol and security classifications. Grant's colleagues know better than to ask questions when senior officers issue arrest orders, but their faces show confusion and concern. This is not the kind of man who commits gross misconduct without extraordinary circumstances driving his actions. Grant's calm demeanor suggests he possesses knowledge that others do not. His confidence appears unshaken by the arrest, as if he understands something fundamental that has escaped his superiors. There is no panic in his eyes, no desperate attempts to explain himself to the gathering crowd. Instead, he waits with the patience of someone who has learned to trust that truth eventually surfaces, even when buried beneath layers of misunderstanding and rigid procedure. The cameras continue rolling as palace officials struggle to maintain order while managing an unprecedented situation. Grant's reputation among his peers makes this arrest particularly shocking since he has never shown anything but absolute dedication to his duties. His service record reads like a manual for military excellence, yet here he stands in handcuffs accused of the very misconduct that goes against everything he represents. But why was this man being arrested, and what did he know that everyone else did not? The answer would soon emerge from an unexpected source as the king himself prepared to witness what he believed would be routine military discipline. King Charles approaches the situation expecting routine discipline, unaware that he's about to embark on a journey that will challenge everything he believes about leadership. In his role as monarch and commander-in-chief, Charles has spent decades learning the intricate protocols that govern royal conduct and military procedure. Every decision follows established chains of command, while every action must align with centuries of tradition that have kept the monarchy stable through wars and political upheavals. This morning appears no different as he prepares to address what his aide described as a clear case of insubordination requiring immediate intervention. Protocol demands swift punishment for insubordination. Judgment sometimes demands hesitation. Charles has witnessed similar situations during his military service, where exceptions undermine the authority structure that keeps complex organizations functioning effectively. His training taught him that leadership sometimes requires making difficult decisions that prioritize the greater good over individual circumstances. The aide told the king a delivery van was blocked and an order refused. No more details. Charles knows that Staff Sergeant Grant refused to allow the vehicle to proceed to its designated location near the kitchen entrance. The aide mentioned something about Grant's concerns regarding the contents, but dismissed these worries as unfounded paranoia from a soldier who had become overly cautious during his years of service. The incomplete picture suggests straightforward insubordination that requires standard disciplinary measures. Charles's initial confidence in his decision begins to waver as he observes Grant's unwavering composure throughout the arrest procedure. Most soldiers facing serious disciplinary action show signs of distress or attempt to explain their behavior to anyone who will listen. Grant displays none of these typical responses, instead maintaining the steady demeanor of someone who believes his actions were justified despite the consequences. The king notices how Grant's breathing remains controlled, and his posture stays perfectly aligned, even with handcuffs restricting his movement. This level of calm suggests either complete acceptance of wrongdoing or absolute certainty that time will vindicate his choices. Phones capture every moment as veterans in the crowd whisper among themselves about Grant's reputation for protecting royal events. Their concerned murmurs create an undercurrent of tension that challenges the official narrative of simple misconduct. Royal protocol demands that Charles continue with the arrest despite his growing uncertainty about the full circumstances surrounding Grant's actions. Centuries of tradition have established that military discipline cannot bend to accommodate individual judgment when it conflicts with direct orders from superior officers. The king understands that making exceptions could set dangerous precedents that undermine the entire command structure upon which royal security depends. Every camera recording the scene creates additional pressure to demonstrate that royal authority remains absolute regardless of personal feelings or incomplete information. The first hints emerged that this situation involves more complexity than simple disobedience, as experienced military personnel in the crowd express growing concern about the arrest. Palace security staff exchange glances that suggest they possess knowledge that has not reached the king's level of briefing. The breakdown in normal ceremony creates visible tension among the guards who continue executing their duties while processing the unprecedented nature of what they are witnessing. The contrast between Charles's public authority and his private doubts about the situation becomes increasingly apparent as he processes the visual evidence before him. Grant's complete lack of panic or desperation suggests knowledge that others do not possess, while the supportive murmurs from veterans indicate respect earned through proven service rather than ceremonial duty alone. Charles realizes he may be missing crucial information that could completely change his understanding of recent events. The king finds himself standing at the intersection of rigid protocol and human intuition. Grant's steady gaze meets his own across the courtyard, creating a moment of silent communication that transcends rank and ceremony. Something in the staff sergeant's eyes suggests this arrest represents far more than simple misconduct. The weight of command has never felt heavier as Charles processes the growing evidence that his initial assessment may have been fundamentally flawed. Grant requests permission to speak. The moment Grant speaks those 5 words, "One truth before you take me away," the entire dynamic shifts from punishment to potential testimony. His voice cuts through the winter air with the calm authority of someone who has delivered life-or-death intelligence under enemy fire. Grant does not plead or beg for mercy. Instead, he makes a simple request that transforms the arrest from routine discipline into something far more significant. The handcuffs glint in the winter sunlight around his wrists, but do not diminish the weight of his words as he addresses the king directly with the respect due to his monarch, but also with the urgency of someone who believes lives may depend on what happens next. Grant's refusal to be quietly removed forces Charles into uncharted territory where protocol meets human urgency in ways the king has never experienced during his decades of royal service. Standard procedure calls for arrested personnel to be escorted away immediately without speeches or explanations that might undermine military discipline. Grant understands these rules better than most soldiers, yet he chooses to break them in full view of cameras and witnesses. His decision to speak represents a calculated risk that suggests extraordinary circumstances requiring immediate attention from the highest levels of authority. The crowd presses closer as veterans in the audience recognize the gravity of what they are witnessing. The NCOs pause. The brigadier searches for orders. Former soldiers understand the significance of a decorated serviceman risking court-martial to deliver urgent information to his commanding officer. Their voices create public pressure that makes Charles's decision impossible to delay or delegate to subordinates. Grant's measured voice transforms the charged atmosphere from spectacle to something approaching a military tribunal where truth takes precedence over ceremony. Each word he speaks carries the weight of careful consideration rather than desperate improvisation. His breath stays steady despite the mental restraints and the pressure of addressing royalty while under arrest for gross misconduct. Grant frames his request with the precision of someone who has briefed senior officers in combat zones where clarity means survival. The veteran understands he has perhaps 30 seconds to convince the king that his information justifies breaking with established protocol in front of rolling cameras and growing crowds. Charles wrestles with competing demands of maintaining royal authority versus acknowledging a loyal servant's final request for consideration. Decades of training have taught him that exceptions to military discipline can cascade into institutional breakdown if not carefully controlled. Yet something in Grant's demeanor suggests this request comes from genuine concern rather than personal desperation. The king recognizes the difference between a soldier making excuses and a warrior delivering intelligence that he believes could prevent catastrophe. Charles faces a choice between rigid adherence to protocol and the kind of leadership that adapts when presented with unexpected circumstances. The king grants exactly 1 minute for Grant to explain himself, knowing cameras are recording every second of this unprecedented deviation from standard procedure. 1 minute, Charles announces with the authority of someone who understands the weight of command but also the responsibility that comes with absolute power. His willingness to listen represents a moment where leadership transcends mere administration of existing rules. The 60-second limit maintains some semblance of control while acknowledging that Grant's service record has earned him the right to speak. Every person in the courtyard understands they are witnessing history as protocol bends to accommodate human judgment. This decision represents Charles stepping away from rigid adherence to tradition toward genuine leadership that prioritizes substance over appearance. The king demonstrates that true authority includes the wisdom to recognize when circumstances require flexibility. Grant's steady cadence despite cuffed wrists frames this as a calculated risk where silence could mean catastrophe for people who cannot protect themselves. Charles crosses his own threshold by choosing to listen rather than simply command, opening himself to transformation through information he does not yet possess. Grant prepares to share the secret buried for 16 years under official classifications. The countdown begins as Grant's voice prepares to carry everyone present back to a moment that changed everything. Grant's voice carries across the silent courtyard as he transports everyone back to Helmand Province in 2009, where a split-second decision saved multiple lives. His words paint a picture of dusty convoy routes where Taliban fighters watched from hidden positions, waiting for British forces to follow predictable patterns. The veteran speaks with the measured tone of someone recounting tactical decisions rather than making excuses. Every person in the crowd understands they are hearing classified information that has never been shared outside military intelligence circles. The convoy mission began like dozens of others, with Grant serving as lead scout for a supply run through territory where roadside bombs claimed lives every week. His unit received locked route coordinates through a valley where intelligence suggested recent Taliban activity. Grant's instincts told him something felt wrong about the main approach based on patterns he had observed during previous missions. His radio call requesting permission to take an alternate route was denied with orders to proceed along the planned path. Grant chose to ignore direct orders and lead the convoy down an unmarked track, despite knowing this decision could result in court-martial. The convoy reached the forward base 27 minutes behind schedule, with no explanation that satisfied commanding officers. The aftermath revealed devastating consequences that Grant's disobedience had prevented when bomb disposal teams discovered an improvised explosive device planted precisely where the convoy would have traveled. The IED contained 200 pounds of explosives rigged end-to-end, enough to destroy multiple vehicles and trigger a coordinated ambush from Taliban fighters positioned in elevated positions overlooking the kill zone. The successful operation that followed led to the capture of 23 Taliban fighters and provided valuable intelligence about coordinated attacks planned against British forces throughout the region. The official memo detailing these events was sealed immediately to protect ongoing operations. He kept that secret for 16 years under the Official Secrets Act. Grant has carried this burden, bound by classifications that prevented him from defending his judgment when similar situations arose during his continued military service. The current threat emerges as Grant reveals details about the suspicious delivery van that triggered this morning's confrontation outside the palace kitchen entrance. His trained eyes identified fertilizer traces and hidden detonator components that matched signature patterns from Manchester Arena and London Bridge attacks. The evidence suggested a coordinated international operation targeting the royal family during a scheduled public event where between 40 and 60 people would have been in the blast radius. The veteran explains how his request to inspect the vehicle's contents was dismissed by superior officers who viewed his concerns as excessive paranoia from a soldier who had become overly cautious during his years of service. Standard protocol called for delivery vehicles to proceed directly to designated areas without additional security screening beyond basic identification checks. Grant's insistence on thorough inspection violated established procedures that prioritized efficiency over what his superiors considered unnecessary delays. His refusal to allow the van to proceed without proper screening triggered the chain of events that led to his arrest for gross misconduct. Grant's voice remains steady as he describes the familiar pattern of being ordered to ignore his instincts in favor of rigid adherence to protocol that fails to account for evolving threats. The same institutional thinking that nearly cost lives in Afghanistan was about to repeat itself in the heart of London, where the consequences could extend far beyond military casualties. His decision to block the delivery van represented the same calculated risk he took in Helmand Province, choosing potential court-martial over allowing preventable deaths. The classified nature of his previous vindication meant Grant could never point to his track record of successful threat assessment when defending his current actions. Each time his judgment conflicted with official procedure, he faced disciplinary action without the ability to reference the lives his disobedience had already saved. The weight of carrying secrets that could justify his behavior while being unable to share them had defined his career for more than a decade. King Charles processes the magnitude of what his guard has revealed as the courtyard falls completely silent around them. The weight of Grant's revelation crashes over Charles like a physical blow as he realizes his guard was not defying orders, but preventing mass casualties with the same precision that saved British soldiers 16 years ago. The king stands frozen as familiar landmarks of military protocol disappear beneath the fog of new understanding. Charles has been viewing this morning through the narrow lens of ceremonial procedure, when the reality involves life and death calculations that extend far beyond royal tradition. Grant's impeccable service record cannot be dismissed when that service includes preventing multiple security breaches through tactics that saved lives rather than followed procedures. The king recognizes that Grant's methods consistently produced results even when those methods appeared to violate established protocols. Charles begins questioning whether his understanding of military discipline has been too rigid to accommodate the tactical thinking that prevents catastrophes before they unfold. Palace security operates through established channels that filter information through multiple levels before reaching royal attention, while Grant's training taught him to process threats in real time without waiting for official confirmation. The incomplete briefing about the vehicle incident failed to capture the urgency that Grant recognized based on patterns learned during years of counterterrorism operations. The fertilizer traces and hidden detonator components would mean nothing to ceremonial guards, but everything to someone who has seen similar signatures in active combat zones. Intelligence estimated 40 to 60 casualties with fertilizer signatures matching Manchester Arena and London Bridge attacks. The numbers hit Charles with devastating clarity as he pictures the staff members, caterers, and security personnel who would have been working in that kitchen entrance area when the explosion occurred. Grant's same split-second judgment saved the convoy in Afghanistan and stopped a van today where trusting instincts over orders meant the difference between mission success and mass casualty events. The pattern emerges clearly, showing that Grant's disobedience was actually superior threat assessment applied consistently throughout his military career. Both incidents reveal Grant's willingness to accept personal consequences for protecting others, representing the highest form of military service rather than the gross misconduct suggested by his arrest. Charles recognizes that punishing such judgment would send exactly the wrong message about the values that should guide royal protection. The emotional weight builds as Charles understands how close he came to destroying a man whose only crime was caring more about lives than career advancement. Grant's calm acceptance of arrest, despite knowing he had prevented a terrorist attack, demonstrates the selfless service that forms the backbone of royal security. The crowd's energy shifts as murmurs of understanding replace initial shock among the gathered witnesses. Veterans in the audience nod with recognition as they process Grant's explanation and connect it to their own experiences with impossible decisions made under extreme circumstances. Charles looks down at the handcuffs binding his most loyal protector's wrists. He closes his eyes for a moment, processing the magnitude of his error. The king grapples with implications for royal security protocols and his own decision-making processes as he realizes that rigid adherence to procedure could have catastrophic consequences. True leadership means recognizing value in unexpected places and adapting when presented with life-saving truth. The cameras continue recording as the narrative transforms from military discipline to heroic action, with implications that extend far beyond this morning's events. Charles achieves his moment of revelation, understanding that his most dedicated guard was nearly punished for doing his job too well while following protocols that could have resulted in preventable deaths. The burden of command settles on his shoulders as he prepares to make a decision that will echo through British military history. Charles looks directly at Grant, knowing that his next words will transform both men's lives forever. "You disobeyed a direct order both times, but when you did, you may have saved my life." Charles's voice carries across the courtyard with the weight of absolute authority, but also the humility of someone who has just learned a profound lesson about leadership and loyalty. The king's admission transforms the entire atmosphere as hundreds of witnesses realize they are hearing something unprecedented in modern royal history. Charles acknowledges not just Grant's actions, but his own failure to understand the complexity of the situation before ordering the arrest. Gasps ripple through the crowd as phones lower and veterans nod with understanding about the courage required for such public admission. Palace staff exchange glances that reflect their amazement at witnessing royal protocol, bend to accommodate truth over tradition. The arresting NCOs hesitate as they await new orders, unsure whether to continue with the arrest or release their prisoner based on the king's dramatic reversal. Their training prepared them for standard disciplinary procedures, but not for situations where monarchs publicly reverse decisions after hearing classified information. The senior NCO looks between Grant and the king while trying to determine proper protocol for unprecedented circumstances. The handcuffs remain in place while the arresting officers wait for clear direction about how to proceed. "Release him," Charles orders with two simple words that carry the full weight of royal authority. The symbolic power of this command extends far beyond the immediate situation, as it demonstrates leadership willing to admit mistakes when presented with life-saving information. Grant stands perfectly still as the handcuffs are removed, his expression unchanged despite the complete transformation of his situation within minutes. The ritual handshake that follows becomes a moment of reconciliation between authority and expertise, between leadership and loyalty that transcends typical military ceremony. Charles extends his hand to Grant, who accepts it with the same steady composure he maintained throughout the arrest and interrogation. Their handshake represents more than personal reconciliation, as it symbolizes institutional acknowledgement that tactical expertise deserves recognition rather than punishment when applied to protect lives. Charles declares that no soldier should face arrest for protecting the crown when their judgment proves sound, especially when that judgment prevents loss of life during royal events. His words establish new precedent for how military personnel will be evaluated when their actions appear to contradict direct orders but serve the greater mission of royal protection. The king's statement acknowledges that effective security requires tactical flexibility rather than rigid adherence to procedures that might not account for evolving threats. The king issues immediate orders for comprehensive security protocol review, ensuring direct access for tactical expertise regardless of chain of command when urgent threats require immediate assessment. Charles also directs a full honors review of Grant's service record, transforming his career from potential disgrace into recognition of vigilance and duty. His orders ensure that combat experience will have direct voice in royal security planning rather than being filtered through multiple bureaucratic layers. This public reversal demonstrates leadership that prioritizes truth over ego and lives over rigid ceremony in ways that will influence royal administration for generations. Charles returns from his journey transformed from a monarch bound by tradition to a leader who adapts when presented with life-saving truth that challenges established procedures but serves the crown's ultimate mission. The handshake between king and guardian becomes a symbol of recognition where punishment transforms into honor. Grant's steady grip matches the king's firm clasp, creating a moment that captures the essence of true service. The crowd witnesses not just reconciliation, but the birth of a new understanding about the relationship between authority and expertise. This simple gesture represents institutional change that will ripple outward through every level of royal protection, creating lasting reform built on the foundation of one man's courage to speak truth to power. Charles ordered an immediate review of security protocols to ensure tactical expertise has direct access regardless of chain of command when urgent threats require rapid evaluation. The king instituted a protocol giving combat-experienced personnel a direct voice in threat assessment, preventing critical intelligence from being filtered through administrative layers that might not understand tactical significance. Grant's service record underwent immediate honors review, transforming his career from potential disgrace to formal recognition of vigilance and duty that other security personnel should emulate. The comprehensive security review examines current communication systems and identifies bottlenecks that prevented Grant's intelligence from reaching appropriate decision-makers before the arrest order was issued. Palace officials discover Grant's 22-year history reveals a pattern of life-saving interventions that were never properly recognized because they prevented incidents rather than responding to completed attacks. His ability to identify threats before they materialized into violence earns formal commendation along with assignment to special advisory role in security protocol development. The review confirms that Grant's supposed insubordination represented consistent application of tactical judgment that saved lives while protecting royal events from disruption. Public acknowledgement emerges from this single act of courage as Charles demonstrates that effective monarchy adapts to incorporate valuable lessons rather than maintaining rigid adherence to outdated procedures. The king's willingness to reverse his decision publicly creates precedent for future situations where tactical expertise conflicts with established protocol but serves the greater mission of protecting British lives and institutions. Palace officials begin drafting new guidelines that encourage initiative among security personnel while maintaining appropriate respect for command authority. Balancing discipline with recognition that effective protection requires flexibility when circumstances demand immediate action. Witness reactions capture the broader significance of what unfolded in the courtyard. As retired General Morrison, who observed the events, describes his admiration for both men's conduct under extraordinary pressure. A veteran in the crowd expresses appreciation for Charles's willingness to acknowledge military expertise, even when it challenged royal authority. Tourist Sarah Chen, who filmed the entire confrontation on her phone, later tells reporters she witnessed something that changed her understanding of real leadership. Their testimonies spread through social media, creating broader public understanding about the complex decisions required to maintain royal security in an era of evolving threats. Grant returns to his post still silent and watchful, but now recognized for the guardian he has always been rather than the insubordinate soldier he appeared to be before the truth emerged. His colleagues treat him with new respect based on understanding that his tactical awareness has protected them all during years of service they never fully appreciated. Grant maintains the same professional demeanor that characterized his behavior throughout the arrest and interrogation, showing that recognition does not change his fundamental commitment to duty. He continues scanning crowds and evaluating potential threats with the same intensity that marked his previous service, while knowing his judgment now carries institutional support. The transformation extends beyond individual recognition to fundamental questions about how institutions balance established procedure with life-saving expertise. Charles's public reversal demonstrates that wisdom involves listening to knowledge regardless of its source, even when that knowledge challenges comfortable assumptions about authority and protocol. The new paradigm values courage and expertise over ceremonial compliance, creating change that prioritizes substance over appearance. Knowledge changed power, and leadership adapted to embrace truth that could save lives. Grant's steady presence at his post represents more than personal vindication, as it symbolizes institutional recognition that the most valuable insights often come from unexpected sources. His willingness to risk everything for what he believed was right created lasting change that will protect future generations. The courtyard confrontation revealed fundamental truths about the relationship between authority and expertise, between following orders and following conscience when lives hang in the balance. A single minute and a single truth changed a king's mind. Charles discovered that real leadership means listening when expertise challenges authority, especially when lives depend on getting it right. Grant's courage to speak truth to power created change that will protect others who serve with the same dedication. True authority includes the wisdom to reverse course when presented with life-saving information rather than defending decisions that could cost lives. The most valuable insights often come from those closest to the danger who understand threats that others might dismiss. When has following orders conflicted with saving lives? Tell us in the comments. Like if this moved you, and comment who else should hear this story.